Perhaps the greatest platform for a united Africa is the African Continental Free Trade Area. And I'm sure you've heard a lot about its transformative impact that it's having and it will have in the years to come. But let's crystal ball gaze for a second and list some of the things that we want for Africa. Through this chaos that we're seeing in supply chains, the conflicts of war, and the multitude of intersecting crises, we want our continent to find its place in that, and we want to be the new star in supply chains. We want to see rapid industrialization, factories fueled by the power of the wind and the sun, so that countries start to trade with each other and trade with the rest of the world. We want an energy transition that is not a burden to our economies, but is a boon to our economies. Most of all, we want to fuel peace, we want to fuel progress, and we want to fuel prosperity. Now, for that to happen, we need to invest. And two of the main areas where we need to invest is in technology, the right technology, digital technology, and transportation. Digital technology, for example, digital trade, presents a huge opportunity in virtually every sector of the economy. It's a catalyzer, significant catalyzer for creating quality jobs, for alleviating poverty, for reducing inequalities, for fostering digital inclusion and facilitating the smooth running of goods and services. And then there's transport. Roads to rail, ports to airports. There's massive opportunity, but there needs to be massive investment in transportation. So what we have here is a panel of movers and shakers who will unpack just how we're going to get to this place that we just sort of imagined. Now, Suma is one of several Turkish construction companies undertaking massive building projects in Africa, such as Senegal's 50,000-seater stadium, do I get that right? And a convention center in DRC, one in Rwanda, airports too. Now, Salim Bora, the chairman of Suma International Construction Group, I tell you, is probably the main person who keeps Chinese CEOs of construction companies up at night, because he's really giving them a run for their money. Now, Walid Hareb Al-Falahi is the chief executive officer of the Dubai Consultancy. He founded it in 2005. Dubai Consultancy focuses on creating high-profile, high-targeted business networks where potential buyers can meet suppliers and their products on what you would call, I guess, common ground. Ask Walid what his strongest skill is, and he will say networking. He's a master at putting people and businesses together, and he's got the success stories to prove it. Pamela Coke-Hamilton, she's been the executive director of the International Trade Center, we all call it ITC, since 2020, October. And she's led the agency to meet the economic and trade challenges posed by COVID-19 and the subsequent global supply chain problems that I talked about. She's got a lot of experience and expertise in trade-related capacity building and sustainable development. The last guest, when he comes in, I'll give him an introduction worthy of his status. But for now, I'll begin the conversation as, aha, there he is. Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause, please. Perfect timing. I was just about to introduce you. Now, in my home country of Nigeria, right? Your panelist right there that just came in is something of a legend in the business world. He's a big player, and I'm going to take a big breath to say this. Cement, sugar, rice, flour, pasta, cooking oil, logistics, agriculture, construction, ports, real estate. He's a philanthropist, very nice guy as well. Please welcome founder and chairman, Bua Group, Abdul Rabiu. Okay, so that's your panel. I'm going to take a seat now. I've done the introductions worthy of such an eclectic mix of wonderful people. I'll go this way down, perhaps. Salim, now you were quoted, I read an Economist article where you said that 10 years ago, you had no projects in Africa outside of, I think, Libya. And now, 99% of your work is in Africa. Turkish construction companies are really they're really doing amazing work in the region. What is that recipe you have for getting deals done and getting projects done so quickly? I think you did the Rwanda project in 6 months, you built that? So come on, demystify this. The Chinese construction guys are not listening to this, so you can give us your secrets.
Please, Mark, don't put me in a difficult position, you know. We are all friends at the end of the day. So, yeah, actually, Turkish contractors are well known in the world. But Sub-Saharan Africa was kind of new in the beginning of 2010, 11. So over the time, we realized that there are other markets where we can be helpful, because the Turkish contractors are efficient in terms of quality, time, and keeping the promises, and also the logistic advantage we have. Out of Turkey, we can ship a lot of goods and services, and we don't really need third country contribution to our execution when it comes to realizing the projects from A to Z. So we have a logistic advantage and, of course, a dedication issue. For instance, I made 120 visits to Dakar last 10 years. So it's basically every month I take the flight.
Yeah,
so
to build those relationships.
Yeah, you have to be there. I mean,
yeah.
You have to spend your time, you have to make sure that your hands on the job. So that's basically the concentration you have to have.
Okay, I'll move now. Walid, let's go from transport to technology. The United Arab Emirates Trade Center, I remember when I last spoke to you, it launched a really interesting digital e-commerce platform that you were central to. It was called Order and Get, I think, in Kenya. So you've got a lot of experiences in sort of e-commerce, or the potential of e-commerce and digitization in the continent, a continent like Africa, particularly as we battle with all these intersecting crises. What are the opportunities there?
First of all, thank you very much. Always, it's fun to be with you, Mark.
Always a pleasure to
I get scared when I'm in the panel with him. He asks all these difficult questions. But I'm coming prepared. Plus, also, I'm very honored to be with in such a panel with brothers and sisters who I really admire. See, basically, people talk about B2B, B2C, etc. And also coming from United Arab Emirates, Dubai, we consider ourselves Africans, and Africans relate to Dubai because it's a trading hub. COVID was tough on everybody, but also COVID brought a new element that we couldn't travel, we couldn't go anywhere. And specifically for Africa, I think China was almost shut down. So there were two markets, either Turkey or Dubai.
Sure.
Okay. And that's where we realized that we need to go into that field. But the shocking area, B2B and B2C doesn't exist in Africa. Then the people will say, what the heck this guy talking about? When you go to, let's take East Africa, I'll come to West Africa later on. East Africa, we started with B2C, and all of a sudden we get orders of what? Of B2B. Then we started putting B2B. Then we realized what? You need to create a trading platform, not the B2B, not the B2C. You need to, if we don't find it, we go and we get it. If someone calls us, he wants to come to Dubai, we take him door to door to make sure that he gets the product. But until then, still we are nobody in the field. That's when we were able to hedge logistics. Today, I'll give you an example. I hope there is nobody from Jumia here. Okay?
No, you're safe.
We deliver from Dubai to Nairobi to Mombasa for $10. Jumia deliver from Nairobi to Mombasa for $10. We do it in 2 to 3 days. They do it in 2 to 3 days. Which means, today, in my thought, the future business is cross-border trade. Ma'am, today you have no problem ordering from Dubai at a cheaper price. and treat your, and by the way, this $10 mark is door-to-door custom duty. Duty paid. Why? Because we realize there is a gap in the system. There is a gap in you know, we went and we took 3 planes. Why? Because we realized with mass, you'll be able to lower the prices. So that's what we did from, we merged technology and logistics, and we feel that, and I'm glad, that market, the Amazon of the world and the Alibaba, it will take them a while to understand how to maneuver in it. I hope I answered.
Absolutely, and I saw Rabiu nodding his head. Now, if anybody knows about getting goods across borders, it's this man. Right? He's been through all the slings and arrows that they can throw at him to get his sugar from Nigeria to Senegal, for example. I remember once you telling me a story that it was easier to take it abroad, ship it out of the African continent, and then ship it back to a neighbor, which is quite simply ridiculous, if you think about it, right? So, but now we're in this world of this bold new fourth industrial revolution with artificial intelligence and all those digital technology and so on. Surely, you know, your business has to move with the times. What does all this mean, possibly, getting past these like non-tariff barriers that we face that make it so difficult? You faced it since you launched your business in 1988, was it? Yeah, so I mean, this is a new world. What does it mean for you? How do you harness it?
Thank you, Mark. Thank you for this opportunity. I mean, this is not the first time we're meeting, so I always enjoy, you know, this kind of panels with you, Mark. You know, because anytime we sit down, we discuss a lot of these issues and how we can address the many challenges that we have in Africa, and also to try as much as possible to harness, you know, the resources and add value to the resources that we have in Africa. As we all know, Africa is huge in terms of resources, and thank you once again for giving me the opportunity to come and discuss, you know, what we have in Africa and what we can do. I know, you know, there has been quite a lot of talk about, you know, digital transportation, smart transportation, but if you ask me, I think the most important thing that we need to do or to address is the critical infrastructure that we need to fix in Africa. That is the first thing. We can talk about anything, but Africa is lacking as far as infrastructure is concerned. And without infrastructure, there is no way we can develop. There is no way we can have that economic growth that is needed, okay? You gave an example, you know, the transportation of goods from Africa to within Africa. You are right. During, you know, a few years ago, when the African Continental Free Trade Agreement was muted, we saw a huge opportunity there, and immediately we started, you know, looking for ideas of what to do to take advantage of, you know, that platform. And we realized, you know, because of course I'm in the cement business and also in the foods business, so we have a sugar refinery in Nigeria, and so we decided to go and set up a port-based destination sugar refinery. Probably the only one apart from the one that is in Egypt. So what that means is that in the entire, if you look at the entire corridor, you know, that is, you know, West Africa and even, you know, some parts of East Africa, Nigeria is the only country that has sugar refineries. And we decided, look, this is an opportunity because a lot of sugar that is being imported, you know, to Africa is mainly coming from Brazil and other countries.
Exactly.
So because we have the sugar refinery and also because we have a terminal, a port in Port Harcourt, we decided to go and invest, set up a sugar refinery. Of course, we also have, you know, the plantation. Of course, plantation is, you know, seasonal, meaning that you cannot work throughout the year. So we set up that sugar refinery with the intention of exporting sugar to other African countries that do not have sugar refineries and that import a lot of sugar, which made perfect sense. So we're lucky we finished it. The AFC, African Continental Free Trade Agreement, took effect, and we're able to, you know, take advantage of that. However, when we started, we were selling FOB, meaning that free on board, anybody buying sugar should come and buy from us, from our factory, and then export or, take, freight to their countries. So after a couple of months, we realized that a lot of the customers that were trying to buy the sugar from us could not actually find vessels to transport the sugar from, say, Nigeria to even Ghana next door. And so I started checking. That was when I made that remark that, and it is still the case, it is cheaper to import goods from China or from Brazil to Africa than from Nigeria to Ghana or from Ghana to Nigeria. So we were stuck. And for us to continue that business, we had to invest to buy vessels, just so that, could be transporting our sugar from Nigeria to some of these countries that some of them are just a day or 2 days voyage. So what I'm trying to say here is that we need to fix the infrastructure, because it doesn't make sense for us that we cannot ship goods from Nigeria to Ghana. And the same thing goes if you look at, that is, shipping, road infrastructure, power,
Rail.
seaports, rail networks. All of these are lacking in Africa. So I think the most important thing for us is to look at, because there's no way we can develop. If you look at what is going on, for example, within the continent, like my good friend mentioned Senegal. We go there quite a lot. We do a lot of business in Senegal. But the issues are there, and these countries are hungry. So we have a lot that we can do. That is on infrastructure. The second thing that I think is very important that we also must try to address is adding value to the resources that we have in Africa.
Value addition, localization.
Value addition is key.
Yeah.
Because if you look at, some of the cash crops we produce in Africa, it is a no-brainer that we are not adding value. Africa, in fact, 4 countries in Africa, in fact, in West Africa, Cote d'Ivoire, Nigeria, Cameroon, and Ghana produce 75% of the entire cocoa production in the world. And that is a $150 billion market. Yet, what do we get? 10% of that.
Yeah.
So value addition is key. These are the areas that I think we need to concentrate on. Infrastructure, food security, value addition.
Value addition.
Every day we meet, we discuss, but nothing is really happening. So I think it is very important for us to continue to push to ensure that, I know that some of these issues are quite expensive in terms of CapEx or what have you. So we need DFIs, we need PPP, we need all of those things.
Okay.
But these are the areas that we need to, I think, concentrate on.
You make some very good points, and you mentioned the AFCFTA being 3 years old since the starting gun was fired on the trading. I had the luxury, that was during lockdown, January 2000. 21, yeah. And we had to do this thing remotely. So we were all sitting in our different, and we had to do this virtual launch, as I recall. You were there.
I was.
And I was the moderator, and I called on you, right? 3 years on, biggest lessons. What have you learned, especially for things like, say, small businesses?
I think, well, let me just start with where the panelists left off. It's always fascinating for me to hear real businessmen because they get to the root of, you do it every day, so you get it. It's harder when you're talking in theory because people like to, expound on theoretical constructs, but when you're actually in the business, you can speak to it. The beauty of the AFCFTA was that it was designed to address these very issues. And one of the things that we have done at ITC is to work with both the AU Commission and the AFCFTA Secretariat to begin to define some of these very challenges. How do we begin to address these challenges? And basically supporting them in terms of, for example, the protocol on services that's just been done. Let me give you some specifics. It's 2 to 4 times more expensive to have goods transported within Africa than anywhere else in the world. It is 3 times more expensive in terms of time to get goods. Well, you gave the example, Dubai, what was it? Turkey, Mombasa. Is the same as, was it Turkey, Mombasa? So basically, the timing within Africa continues to be a challenge. And what happens when you have difficulty with timing? You have expense, you have loss of trust, and you also have spoilage or delay. And when the delay occurs, you cannot do real business. And so one of the big elements is how do you make intra-African trade? It is the lowest in the world as well. Intra-African trade 3 years ago was 14%.
Yes.
It is now 20%. So there's been an improvement since
Yes.
AFCFTA. But the point is that there is a significant challenge with intra-African trade, mainly due to infrastructural issues, and not just transport infrastructure, but as you mentioned, the digital. Digital is going to completely transform not just Africa, but the way the world trades. And if we don't address that, the whole issue of blockchain, traceability, addressing the issues with respect to the EU deforestation regulations, and being able to meet that along the value chain. Value addition, huge issue. You're right. Congo, 70% of the world's cobalt comes from the Congo.
Lithium, copper, aluminium. Yeah.
No value addition.
Yeah.
Every single electric vehicle being built in the developed world is going to be dependent, and yet 10%, if that. And so there has to be a significant change in how Africa addresses its own commodities and the dependence thereon, and the decision to not export anything that doesn't have at least one level of value addition or more before it goes out. You know the biggest exporter of coffee? The Netherlands. Because everything leaves Ethiopia and elsewhere and goes
as raw.
across.
Yes.
Chocolate, where
Yeah.
I'm coming from, Switzerland.
Yeah.
Avocado.
Insanity.
Italy is the biggest exporter
it's
of
interesting because-
avocado oil.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that we need to change the mathematical equations that
Absolutely.
exist. It's not about projects
It's
and programs.
systems.
It's about mathematical equations that we've been living by that keep us in the same status quo. You mentioned infrastructure. Infrastructure needs financing.
Yep.
And finding financing, like concessional financing for infrastructure, is like finding chicken with teeth. Very rare. But you seem to do it. And you know, this infrastructure needs to be resilient as well.
Yes.
And now resilient infrastructure that can
Yes.
take this, the climate, and in Africa we get some of the heaviest climate impacts. You saw what has happened around, look, even in our own country, whole villages were swept away last year, right? So you have to build this thing resilient. That costs money. That needs concessional financing sometimes. You manage to actually get past that. You seem to have some way of solving the riddle of infrastructure financing. Please tell us something.
Mark, actually, that's a very long journey. When you make an application to a development bank or an international financial institution, the time the time it takes for them to evaluate an application
Yes.
is longer than the time of execution of the
Of
project.
this construction, yes.
So by the time we are done with the project,
Yeah.
they are still evaluating the application.
Lenders or box tickers.
Yes.
Lenders or
Yeah,
box
we
tickers.
have to find a solution to that. I mean, so what do? We find commercial loans at least to make the project up and running and try to do refinancing afterwards on a longer borrowings. So in a way, to bridge this gap, we always need certain liquidity so that we bring the project to a reality. And this is how we've been doing so far. And for the infrastructure, he was very right. I mean, to transfer the goods within the continent is a challenge.
Yes.
Immediately, a master railroad program needs to be implied.
I'm going to just go over to the industrialist here and ask you, you have to raise, you're constantly on the hunt to capitalize your business, to raise finances in a very difficult climate. And every business you do is capital intensive. So tell us a little bit about some of the ways you get past that, or if not, some of the challenges that you're facing in 2023.
Well, it all depends. You see, and I appreciate where he's coming from. You know, there are quite a lot of challenges in trying to get, you know, money from the DFIs. But we have actually been able to raise, to secure a $500 million last year, in fact, this year, early this year from IFC.
IFC, yes.
That money has been disbursed. And that is because of the impact of the project. It took us a bit of time, but they looked at it. It's in a remote part of Nigeria, is for cement. And
This is the one that runs on solar, right?
this is the one that you are there, I think, at the signing ceremony sometime this year with, you know, IFC. I think it was signed that agreement, that facility in, you know, in Cote d'Ivoire during the Africa CEO Forum. That money has been disbursed. So what I'm trying to say here is that if you have a good project, and of course you have to have, you know, the strength to be able to understand and also to be able to ensure that it is a project that is viable, that, you know, has an impact, especially in the area or areas that you are setting up the project. This is a cement project, and the reason at the time we gave was, one, the project, you know, is sited in the northern part of Nigeria, so it's more or less like, you know, if you may, green cement, you know, because we are using LNG, we are not using coal. Of course, fossils is, or was a problem. I don't think it is anymore now because of the Ukrainian and Russian war. I think, you know, it's a bit muted now, you know, somehow. But again, you know, this is a project that, you know, is going to be producing 6 million tons. We just announced, you know, a few weeks ago that we are going to reduce the price of cement in Nigeria by the end of the year, once we commission 2 lines of 6 million tons, you know, by the end of this year. The reason is because we have the resources in Nigeria. Limestone and gypsum are 80% of the raw materials needed to produce cement. And if you have these projects scattered all over the country, first, you know, you are able to create wealth within that neighborhood. You use their raw materials, you add value, and you are self-sufficient. So we've been able to do that, and because of that, we approached the government to discuss, and they wanted us to support them, and we agreed that we reduce the price of cement so that going forward, Nigeria will be using cement for construction of roads. So we'll be having concrete roads at a cheaper price, because for you to import, to do asphalt, you need to import bitumen. And bitumen is very expensive. You have to use foreign exchange. But with cement, it's something that is produced locally, and that is what we're doing. And again, you know, back to what we were saying regarding, you know, the funding of big projects. I think it has to be, government alone cannot do it. Private sector, yes. DFIs, yes. So there has to be this PPP arrangement, where the government will come, you know, together with the private, you know, with the private sector to try and, you know, add value to what we have. Look at what we are doing, for example, in Nigeria. There is this, you know, policy that just, you know, came out 2 years ago in Nigeria, which is called, you know, Road Infrastructure Tax Credit Scheme. So the government approaches the private sector. They identify areas where they can, you know, support in terms of construction of either roads or rail, and if you agree, then they give you tax credit.
Right.
So you get the money after a few years, but in the meantime, you know, they can tap, you know, funding from the private sector. You have efficiency, you're able to do the project. So we are doing something similar now in Nigeria, and I think this is an area where some of the countries in Africa can maybe come together to see how they can, you know, replicate what Nigeria is doing. That way, we'll be able to have the private sector. We have companies like Salim to go and maybe can build, you know, the construction of Senegal to Nigeria Trans-African Highway. I can give you some cement. You can go and get steel from other companies, and you can go and get your money after 5 years.
Agree.
Business is happening before your very eyes, before your very eyes. Actually, Walid, you're an investor, aren't you? Because I remember, Walid, that you had a solar project.
I want to be the nice guy, but I cannot.
Okay, no, it's not
sustain
really.
that.
Go ahead, unleash.
See, I have an infrastructure project in Africa.
Yeah, solar in Ghana,
to be honest, that talk that there is no money in Africa is nonsense.
There's money. I agree.
There's money in Africa.
There is money in Africa, but to be honest, I hope there is nobody from World Bank or
No. Nobody from Jumia, nobody from World Bank. You're free, you're amongst friends.
I want to come back again here.
Yes, go ahead.
We already understood what you
It's
meant.
called Unstoppable Africa, so we can't stop you. Go ahead.
Honestly, we have we're bringing $100 million, and we are telling a government in Africa, give us a guarantee. Tomorrow, anything happen, I need to be guaranteed. And the answer is what? No, sir, we cannot give you a guarantee. So what should I do? I put my money in Dubai. 100 million will get me 400 million. Better. At least lower risk. I know that Africa is all about better margins. But in actual reality, these governments need to be serious. An investor coming, believe me, UAE came during Africa Climate Summit, COP, and we put $4.5 million on the table, and we said, listen, we're going to bring the money. What we realize that, sorry to say, also as much as we are putting pressure on the investor to put money, government need to be serious. They need to be serious. You know? Yeah. Because an investor will not risk his money for the love of any country.
That's true.
Yeah. You know? I've got to interrupt you because I'm realizing that we're totally out of time and I'm going to get screamed at in a few minutes. And I want to bring in Pamela quickly. 2 questions, actually, if you can answer them straight away. One of the things we haven't mentioned, women and youth, which is a real main area for you. You've been doing a lot of mainstreaming them into intra-Africa trade. I wanted to know how you're doing that with technology, but I also had another question about, a lot of this is to do with lack of data. Sometimes I feel like the AFC, FTA, we're scrambling in the dark. We just don't know enough, right? We don't have enough qualitative and quantitative data to make the decisions necessary, informed decision. This is something you're passionate about. If you could just touch on those 2 things, then I think someone's going to drag us off the stage in a few seconds.
Very quickly before you bring the thing to drag us off. First of all, as you know, ITC does a lot on market intelligence. It's our bread and butter. And we actually have worked with the AFCFTA Secretariat and the AU on the Africa Trade Observatory, which basically tracks, the barriers to trade, rules of origin, all of that. So data is very important, and ensuring that you have the data so that you can make decisions. Lack of informed decisions leads to lack of implementation. The second issue on women and youth. We have over 40 She Trades hubs across Africa. And we are very, very vested in trying to ensure that women are able to do the cross-border trading that they need to do. It continues to be a challenge because we know the challenges women face. I mean, I could go on and on, but they're waiting to drag us off.
Yes.
but the issue of women and informal trading especially needs to be addressed within Africa because it's a significant issue.